the first thing we have to do is make the pattern. I'm making mine about 17 inches long and 11.5 inches wide. Then I mark one side to be cut on the fold. The top edge needs to be slightly higher in the very center, so I'm just sort of freehanding a little curve there, bringing it down a little bit on the outside edge. Next, we have to mark where our boning channels are going to go, and I'm doing that by marking 7 inches down from the top edge and then marking the center point between that point and the bottom. Then, in order to make these pocket hoops, we have to remember to put a little slit in the center so that we'll be able to reach through them to our pockets underneath. Then I'm just carrying over the markings for the boning channels over to the other side of the pattern and drawing the horizontal lines between them. And then just drawing a little squiggly line across the top to remind myself that that edge will eventually be pleated down. After pinning my pattern down, I cut it out, leaving about an inch seam allowance around all sides of the pattern except the folded edge, which went on the folded edge of my fabric. So to create the slit at the top, we unfold our fabric and then we cut straight down from the top through the center line all the way 7 inches down to the point that we had marked on our pattern. We go straight down to that point and then cut inwards a little bit, like about 1/4 of an inch from each side. Then we fold that edge back 2 times and hem stitch it down. For the gap across the bottom, we just do some whip stitches right across that edge to keep it from fraying. Next, we need to attach the boning channels. There are 3 boning channels, and the first of these goes right across the bottom edge of the pocket hoops. So to prepare that bottom edge, we fold it upwards once, and then use a basting stitch to tack it down. For my boning channels, I'm using 3/4 inch plain weave white cotton tape from Burnley and Trowbridge. So I'm just taking that and laying it down across the bottom edge there to measure out how much I'm going to need. After putting the tape in place, I used a spaced back stitch to attach it to the fabric. And all that is a regular back stitch with some running stitches in between. So doing maybe 2 or 3 regular back stitches and then a running stitch. And it's a little bit less strong than a full back stitch, but you don't need this to be especially strong of a stitch. It's not going to take that much stress. So then you just repeat that process for the remaining 2 boning channels. Before we can put the bones in, we need to close up one of the sides. So I'm just doing that the same way that we hemmed the little pocket slip open, and that's by folding the edge over 2 times and then doing a hem stitch to keep it shut. So the way that this pocket hoop works is it has ties at each of the boning channel points, and you can adjust how extreme of a side pocket silhouette that you want to have by adjusting how tightly you tie those together. So we lay the tie down along the wrong side of the pocket hoop, and then we do a back stitch across the edge to attach it the first time. Once that's done, we flip the tape over and do another line of running stitches, or of back stitches rather, right along the edge. Then we do a hem stitch around the remaining 3 edges of the tie. So you can see that it's really securely attached to the edge of the pocket hoop. So once the bones are in and we tie these strings to adjust the spring of our pocket hoop, there is no chance that the straps are gonna pop off. The ties for the bottommost edge are a little bit different. So these ties need to not only tie together to adjust the spring of the pocket hoops, but they also need to kind of cross in front and in back of your body and tie together with the opposite pocket hoop. So that means that we're going to double the length of the tie from 19 inches to 38 inches, and then we fold it in half and crease it and line that up with the very edge of our fabric. Then we just do a single row of back stitches along that edge to attach it down. Now comes the long-awaited step of inserting the boning. And for this, I'm using 1/2 inch reed boning. It comes kind of like in a big roll, and so you have to cut it to length yourself. And I found what was most useful for this was a little pair of gardening shears. It did the trick really nicely. So I'm just taking that reed boning and inserting it into each one of my boning channels. It was a little bit tricky because the reed is not like sanded down, so it has kind of these like little splintery things that stick off of it and sometimes get caught on the fabric, but it wasn't too big an issue. Just kind of had to take my time and work the fabric over those little rough patches. With the bones inserted, the next step is to close up that open end, and unfortunately I don't know what happened to my footage of that, but you can see here that all I've done is the same thing we did on the other side, which was fold it up twice and use a hem stitch on it. You just had to do it with the bone already in, which wasn't really too difficult. After that, you do have to attach the ties to those ends also, and I also don't know what happened to my footage for that, but pretty straightforward, same process. You just have to do it with the little bone in the way. The final step is to attach the waistband, and to do that we have to pleat that top edge of the pocket hoop down. And you can do this, you know, kind of eye it however much you want to pleat it down, but I did mine where I pleated each side down to about 4.5 inches and then left an inch space on the waistband in the center for the slit to remain open. The waistband is made up of the same tape that we used for the boning channels, and again I just kind of estimated how much I would need by wrapping a length of it around my waist and seeing how much it would take to tie it in a nice little bow. Then I found the center point of that piece and made sure that I lined it up in the center of the pocket hoop. Then I pinned the top edge of the pocket hoop in place on the waistband, and remember that this waistband needs to kind of fold over that raw edge of fabric, and so I pinned it about halfway up. To attach it nice and neatly, I did a back stitch right along the bottom edge of the tape. Then to make it easier to fold down, I trimmed the top edge of the fabric just a teensy little bit. Then I folded the waistband over it, pinned it, and then followed that up with another line of back stitches right along the edge, trying as much as possible to go on the same line of my back stitches from before. And finally, we take the pairs of ties and tie them together, trying to keep the little bow kind of right in the center between the two, and also trying to make it an even distance on all three of the ties. Now this is a little bit tricky, and I think I'm going to have to probably adjust these a little bit and kind of fine tune it later, especially because you have to try and get these even between both pocket hoops, and you'll see in just a second that I did not do a very good job at that. Now let's try them on. Okay, they seem like they're sitting way too high, but maybe once there are petticoats on top of them, it won't be as bad. Also, I'm not sure how you're supposed to tie the front and the back together on your own. I would definitely recommend getting a friend to help you with this part because the tension on those ties are just not correct trying to do it myself. But here they are. You can definitely tell that one side is sitting quite a bit higher than the other, and I think that's because I didn't quite get the ties tied to the same length between the two. I think the one that is on the right hand side of the screen right now is tied a little bit tighter together and so has more of a spring, which is causing it to sit up higher on the hip. Maybe that'll be helped once we get some petticoats on top, but I definitely like the silhouette from the one that is a little bit looser tied right now. So I'm gonna have to make that adjustment in the future.